you to this evening's virtual vaccination education town hall. I want to thank our host partners, the Chicago Urban League and the Illinois Department of Public Health, for their work on tonight's event and for their invaluable partnership and service to the citizens of Chicago and into the state of Illinois. I also want to thank our partners at the Madison County Urban League, the Quad County Urban League, the Springfield Urban League, the Tri-County Urban League, and the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus Foundation for joining us tonight and for your support of this event. A special thank you goes out to our phenomenal panelists, Veronica Holloway, Chief of the Center for Minority Health Services at the Illinois Department of Public Health, Dr. Garth Walker, who is the Deputy Director at the Illinois Department of Public Health and Assistant Professor at Northwestern's Emergency Medicine. We're also proud to welcome Chicago State's own Dr. Chris Batanga, Professor of Biology and Executive Director of the Center for STEM Education and Research at Chicago State University. Finally, I want to thank and welcome all of you for joining us remotely for this critically important discussion. The work of Chicago State University, as many of you know, is driven by the mission to provide world-class higher education opportunities for our students. As the country continues to grapple with COVID-19, we must not lose sight of the pronounced effect that the pandemic has had on our communities of color. As Illinois' only predominantly Black institution, as designated by the United States Department of Education, Chicago State believes that we should be a convener in conversation about a disease that has so impacted our community. So thank you for joining us this afternoon. I look forward to our conversation. It is now my pleasure to turn it over to Karen Freeman Wilson, President and CEO of the Chicago Urban League, for opening remarks. Thank you again.
Thank you, President Scott. And let me just thank you so much for your leadership and for all of the energy that you and your team have placed behind this effort. I also want to thank the team, certainly Governor Pritzker, as well as Dr. Ezike, Dr. Walker, and the entire team from the Illinois Department of Health for everything that they have done to make this possible. I would be remiss if I did not thank my fellow urban leaguers throughout the state of Illinois who have been such great partners, not just in our efforts relative to COVID-19, but in all efforts relative to equity in the Black community throughout the state of Illinois. I want to also thank those who have held high the banner of education, epidemiology, and all of those issues relative to equity and equality as it relates to our response to COVID-19 and now our efforts to get people towards the vaccine so that we can move, I won't say to normal, because I don't know that we'll ever achieve normal as we know it as a community, but as we can get closer to our daily routines. Anyone who is passionate about the work and the efforts that they undertake on a daily basis believes it to be something that can be life-changing. But here's what we know. As a result of both the deaths from this vaccine and the incidence of illness from it, we know that getting the right information, getting accurate information, and embracing that information and acting on it is literally a life or death situation. And so it is the honor and the privilege of the Chicago Urban League to partner with all of the sponsors tonight, all of the panelists who have taken time out of their day to ensure that the public get the right information. And I will tell you that we will continue to provide this information to our community because we know that their lives, that our lives literally depend on it. And so with that, I am honored to welcome to the forum our moderator for tonight, Dr. Chris Batanga, an expert in genetics and expert in DNA and RNA, a professor of biology from Chicago State University, Dr. Batanga.
Well, thank you so very much, Ms. Karen. I greatly appreciate you joining us this evening. We thank you so much. And I cannot say enough about the panel for joining us today. We are greatly delighted to have each one of you. My introduction has already been made so brilliantly by Ms. Karen, but again, I am Chris Batanga. I'm a professor of genetics at Chicago State University. I also double as the director for the Center for STEM Education and Research. We have a very strong panel this evening, and the primary focus of our discussion this evening is to be able to pass out information that people can make decisions from an informed position, not from what they are guessing, they are not too sure. We are very lucky and very fortunate to have an expert panel with us this evening. And I will take the pleasure to have them introduce themselves. I want to start with Dr. Walker, sir, if you may go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you, Dr. Batanga, and thank you everyone for giving us the opportunity to share this space with you. It's been a whirlwind of a year, but we're moving in the right direction. My name is Dr. Garth Walker. I'm an emergency physician. I'm an assistant professor at Northwestern, as well as a deputy director at the Illinois Department of Public Health, where I lead the Office of Men's Health. I'll stop and I'll pass it to Dr. Damon Arnold.
Hi, I'm Dr. Damon Arnold. I actually am a medical director at Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois currently, as the former director of the Illinois Department of Public Health and a former state surgeon and medical commander for the Illinois National Guard Joint Task Force Command. I'm currently an adjunct professor at the University of Illinois College of Medicine and School of Public Health, and serve on the Illinois State Board of Health. And besides my day job, I have a second boss. Her name is Veronica Holloway, and I've been working with her since last March, and also with Dr. Walker on this COVID response is so critically important for our community. So I'll pass it on to Veronica Holloway.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold. Good evening, everyone. And Dr. Arnold, I'm sure that the guilty side of you is introducing me as your boss because you know you work me. But anyway, I am happy to be here, and I do bring you greetings from our director, Dr. Ngozi Ezike. Again, my name is Veronica Holloway. I am chief for the Center for Minority Health Services at the Department of Public Health. And I also co-led with Dr. Arnold, the COVID-19 equity team. And I guess I'm supposed to pass it over to?
Yes, Pastor Moss will go ahead and introduce himself, sir, please.
Thank you very much. It's a delight to be on this panel. I'm Otis Moss. I serve as pastor of Trinity United Church of Christ. I have no medical background whatsoever, but I will say that I follow the advice of medical experts, and I'm here to say that's a good thing to do, especially in COVID-19. Okay. And I'll pass this on over to Mark Hunter.
You're on mute, sir.
Sorry. Just like to wish everyone a good evening, and thank you everyone for being on the call. My name is Mark Hunter. I am a regional health officer for the Illinois Department of Public Health, and my main areas of my main territories of responsibility are the Rockford region, the Northwest 9 counties in Illinois, and 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 the Peoria region as well. And I co-labor and my 3 bosses, Dr. Arnold, Dr. Walker, and Ms. Holloway. I work very hard for them on this venture. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, sir. Thank you, team. Clearly, we're leaving out someone. Mr. Quinton, is Quinton Otto? Is okay. Well, so we go ahead and I will want to start this conversation with Dr. Walker. Dr. Walker, the theme of our conversation this evening is about restoring our communities. From your vantage point, what do you really think we need to do? What is at the center of what we must do to begin restoring our communities?
Thanks, Dr. Batanga. I think reflecting on the year, one of the issues that we've been trying to really focus on is communication, and also translating what the pandemic really means for our community. So I've had clinical exposure as well as research exposure, and now working with the state with how this virus has affected our community. And one of the most challenging issues that we've had, particularly from the ERs, was having that conversation with families that were not ready to have those end-of-life care discussions, that were not able to see their family member during some of their most hardest times and sometimes some of their most last times. And with increased frequency, it happened to Black and Brown communities. And trying to express that and trying to make sure that everybody understands that we have a way to beat this virus has been one of the most challenging things to do during this pandemic, but also some of the most rewarding. We've seen communities truly band together to be able to work with different faith-based organizations to have events such as this, as well as drive people to get vaccinated. So one of the most important things that we can get from this very discussion is that there are things that we can do on a daily basis: wearing a mask, physically distancing, washing our hands, and then most importantly, thinking about some of our most vulnerable communities, what we can do to make sure that they're getting vaccinated, reaching out to our grandmothers, our grandfathers, some of the people that have truly been the base of our communities, to make sure that they're protected as well. So I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Now, you touch a few points here. You touch about our faith-based community. You touch about vaccinations, and I believe that if we may step back for a moment to ask ourselves, members of the panel who have taken the vaccine already, I have a 3-part question for you, or maybe I'll leave it at 2-part questions. The first one is, why did you decide to take the vaccine? And secondly, were there really any adverse side effect that you experienced from taking the vaccine that you want to share with our audience? We'll go ahead and start with Ms. Veronica Holloway, ma'am.
Sure, certainly. So yes, I have taken the vaccine, mostly because I have been at the vaccination sites. So it's important that if I'm around people that I at least, seek to get the protection. So I don't do needles. So it was a challenge for me, not because I'm an anti-vaxxer. I don't believe in vaccinations, because I do, but because I just don't like the look or the feel of needles on my body. But I realized that this is such an important topic. And I also realized that I'm at the front line and I really need to overcome my fear and really practice what I preach. And I know that Dr. Arnold can validate because he probably has the pictures to show it that I really did take one for the team, not only because I believe it's the right thing to do, but that I believe that the sooner we all get vaccinated, the sooner we all can get back to, normal, as close to we know it. So for me, my side effects, my first dose was just mostly just ache in the site. The second dose was more challenging for me, but as I had read up on research, I kind of expected that, so it wasn't too much of a challenge. And so, as the good doctors tell me, that means your immune system is really working. So I did have headaches the day of that lasted 24 hours. I also had nausea. That was for me the most challenging part of things. So I kind of didn't eat much for a whole day and hoped that I would lose 10 pounds, but that didn't work. But outside of that, I was back to normal the following day, and and I feel good.
Wonderful. Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Arnold, sir, you want to share your experience?
Oh, sure. Veronica said she's a little bit afraid of needles, but she made sure I was there to get mine. So I had the first vaccination the first day. I had a little bit of soreness, not much, in the left arm. And then I went back for the second dose. And after the second dose, I had pain in my right shoulder. That was because I had the vaccination in my left shoulder, and I was running for a Zoom meeting, and I hit my right shoulder on the door going into the home. So I had more pain in my right shoulder than I did on my left. And that was all I really had. But I feel now, after having the vaccination about 2 weeks ago, I feel fully protected now. I feel I'm probably getting very close to 95% effectiveness. It's a safe, effective vaccine that can prevent me from going into the intensive care unit and being hospitalized.
Wonderful.
I did one thing that was really quick was I looked at what would happen if we had this vaccine back in December of 2019 and everyone was immunized. We would have saved 476,900 lives. And we would have had about 25,100 lives that may have been lost, but probably would have done okay because they had at least partial protection. And we know that even if you do get the virus, that you're more likely to have a mild course in that 5% of the unprotected zone. So you have 95% protection. I can't think of many things that's more incredible than 95% protection. So just really, I'm glad I got the vaccination. I'm glad my family is doing the same thing.
Good. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Now, talking about the faith-based communities, we are lucky to have Pastor Moss with us this evening, and I'm sure he has a thing or two to share with us, how things have been happening within that community, and from his vantage point, what he thinks we need to do to restore our community to a semblance of what we were prior to COVID. Pastor Moss, sir?
Yeah, thank you. And I appreciate the question. One of the things that I think is incredibly important is to create a partnership between the faith-based community and the medical community. I'll share a simple story. We did a vaccination at Trinity, and we put a link up to reserve your spot for 400. Well, originally it was supposed to be 300 spots. Within 12 minutes, 400 spots were filled. We had to take down the link. 12 minutes. And so there were quite a few people who were upset that they showed up at 13 minutes and there were no spots. But one, it showed that with all of the misinformation, that there are people in our community that want the vaccine. The second piece in the partnership with the medical center that we worked with, they wanted to make sure that you did not have a large number of people who were not from our zip code who got the vaccine. And so we ended up with a 70-30 split. 70% of the people who received the 400 doses, or 408 doses exactly, were African Americans who were from the zip code right over here in Washington Heights, right off of 95th Street, which was absolutely phenomenal. And what we did was, instead of the social media campaign just going from the medical center, we did the social media campaign in conjunction with them. So it reached the community of people who we were trying to reach. When larger institutions send out emails, guess what? A lot of times we don't read them. And then there's a digital divide that we have to deal with. So it was a wonderful partnership. There is a vaccination that we're doing at Amani Village, which we is a part of Trinity United Church of Christ with Advocate. And again, the split is very different when you partner with trusted partners in the community. We can reach the appropriate population.
Thank you so much, Pastor Moch. That's very enlightening. But before we leave this topic right away, so are you saying that how would someone in the audience within your neck of the wood that may be interested in getting vaccinated? So the door is shut for your own side that you had, or what does the future hold?
We're going to be holding another vaccination, but the Advocate Medical Center at Amani Village, which is right next to Chicago State, which is on property that is owned by Trinity. We partnered with Advocate to build that medical center. They are doing vaccinations. As a matter of fact, I'll be there in the morning. A couple of our elected officials will be there to share that, hey, this is a great place for you to get vaccinated right in the community. Kwame Raoul will be there and others. So we're trying to promote that it's safe. I got vaccinated, and to let everybody know that I got vaccinated. And we started a social media campaign to say that it's better to listen to, what was the meme? I think it was like, why would you listen to people at the barbershop instead of medical experts? This whole thing around who should you listen to? Yeah. That, it's okay to listen to people at the barbershop and the salon if you're talking about a Bulls game, but do not listen to people at the barbershop and the salon when it's dealing with your life. Absolutely, and we use this tagline. Everybody wants to see Jesus, but I don't want to see him too soon. So get vaccinated.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, one of the concerns that is really out there, people are very worried. They say, well, the vaccine just came out too fast. But I believe that some of the things that a number of people are missing is the fact that the RNA delivery platform for vaccine has been developed for quite a while. It's not something that started in 2020 or 2019 when the pandemic was about coming. This is a technology that has been around for 7-10 years. And typically vaccine would take this much 7-10 years to develop. But we had a situation where this technology was there, just hanging in the wings. Then in the midst of COVID, you typically have a situation where when vaccine medication are being done, you find a situation that you are scrambling around looking for patients to test the vaccines on them or individual to test it on them. But this vaccine, fortunately, had to be developed at a time when we had thousands of people that are battling the disease. So you could not ask for a better test field than what we had prevailing. So I'm saying this just to lean us to the question or the issue of, oh, well, this thing took place too fast. How can we develop a vaccine within a year? I am sure that someone like Dr. Walker and a number of you in the panel will be coming to you, have a few thoughts on this idea of the speed with which the current vaccines that we are using was developed. Dr. Walker, sir?
Thanks. That's an excellent question, and a question that comes up quite often. One important note about the vaccine is that the science is not new. The rigor that was applied to the science to validate the vaccine is the same rigor that's been applied to the same exact vaccines that your children get when they go to the pediatrician, that pregnant women get. So the science is excellent. And then the second component, Dr. Arnold tends to mention this a lot, is that this is one of the most scrutinized vaccines we have ever seen. It had eyes on it. So many scientists have been able to vet the vaccine that we're very confident in the literature. With respect to the speed, I'd like to let Dr. Arnold take that one because he has a really good answer to that one.
Thank you, Dr. Walker. The speed, we've had this platform available for the last 20 years. It's been around for a couple of decades. It was applied to MERS. It was applied to SARS in the past. It was applied to Ebola during President Obama's administration. And this platform, as Dr. Walker was saying, we had the wrong terminology for this whole campaign, warp speed. The warp speed was not centered around the science behind the development of this vaccine. It was centered around the bureaucratic entanglements that you have to go through to make sure that the scientists can get their work done. So we had telecommunications we never had. We have people, as Dr. Walker was indicating, people from around the world who were communicating, sharing their scientific data. And this was highly scrutinized. And also you had the technology. We have never had technology like this before. This actual platform, if I may, Pastor Moss, godsend. I feel like this is kind of divinely inspired. And we had actually Americans involved in it who actually helped to produce this vaccine. And so the people who were in the studies also were African-American as well. This vaccine is it's been shown to be highly effective, also very, very, very safe. And one of the consequences, I always like to sort of mention this, is that, science never asks you to believe in it, but it is tremendously unforgiving if you do not. So if you decide to walk to the edge of a cliff and take a step, you don't have to believe in gravity, but you will be seeing the end of, the bottom of the cliff. And so you don't have to believe in it. And that's the same thing, I guess, with faith too. You don't have to believe, but believe me, you're going to be suffering the consequences of not believing. So this is something that I think science is really on that platform where it has been shown to be safe and effective. And, you've got the people on the panel right now who are living examples of that. When I went overseas with the military, I used to get 6 vaccinations in the same day. I mean, they used to just hit us in both arms and, give us a card and said, hold on to this card. If you lose this card, you're going to see it again, all these vaccinations when you get to the other side. So I know what vaccinations are about, and I've seen overseas what the absence of vaccinations can do to people. And that's why I think it's so important. We have to believe in this science and what the experts are telling us, as Pastor Moss mentioned.
Yep, thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Not sure if Mr. Hunter has anything to add to that.
No, sir. I am going to yield to the subject matter experts. They have said it absolutely perfectly. I just want to say real quick that I have had my first vaccine, and it is very personal for me. I have lost an aunt and a first cousin to this, and if there is anything that could help our family not go through this again, I was absolutely, and succinctly, I trust the science and I trust God. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you. So a quick, so now let's talking about vaccine. I'm going back here now to Pastor Moss. Is there any reason why a faith-based individual should have a reservation about vaccines? And this particular one we're talking about, is there any reason why based on their faith, they should be holding back from this and say, oh, but wait a minute. I know you have pointed out as a pastor that you've had your shot. So, but hey, please share what you think, whether there's something, there's a premise that we can lean to of not taking this vaccine just because of our faith. So go ahead.
There is no faith or theological framing for not taking the vaccine. Someone can make an individual claim in reference to why they will not take the vaccine, and they will create some ideas. I look at it this way. People who say that I don't want to because I'm fearful. And I see it the same way as wearing seatbelts. Okay, don't wear your seatbelt. But if something happens, we do know that you are going to be in a position that's going to be at best painful, at worst is going to be tragic. And so there is no theological claim, there is no faith-based biblical piece in reference to this of why people should not take the vaccine. Number one, God created the unique brilliance of people in the science field to be able to understand all of the intricacies of creation, to be able to create what we know as the vaccine. The vaccine cannot be created without creation, that which God has created. So let us lend ourselves to people who have studied the beauty, the elegance of God's creation to be able to develop a vaccine. And this is not anything new with the idea of vaccines. They used to call them herbalists back in the day. Your grandmother used to go in the back and say, here, take this. You got issues with your stomach. You got issues with your throat, whatever's going on. People have always been utilizing all of the basic principles of science to create something that is helpful to the human body.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. That's quite enlightening. And I think at the end of the day, probably Ms. Cheville Spearman could share our contact information, emails in the chat panel. I don't know whether the audience can see things in, or of course they have access to Q&A. So you could share our email addresses to that medium. That way, individuals who may want to reach us at some point privately would have the opportunity to be able to do so. Now, moving on. So, Dr. Walker, don't think I'm picking on you, but don't think I'm picking on you, but I'm going around in circles here. So, we have heard quite a bit about herd immunity, and what is it exactly, and why is that important?
So the notion of herd immunity is essentially getting enough people vaccinated where we can essentially fight the virus, meaning that the transmission will be so low that it can't necessarily survive. And in order to achieve that, can be achieved through multiple ways, because other countries have done it without a vaccine. And they have been open and have had the liberty to kind of regain some normalcy. But essentially it is to do the things that can fight a virus, which is wash your hands, reduce transmission via a mask, physically distance, and stay inside. But now we have one of the best tools ever, which is a vaccine. So when we hear different types of efficacy rates among the 3 vaccines available, it essentially means the efficacy in which it is to fight that virus. So for example, Pfizer and Moderna, after you get the same shot twice, 2 weeks after, you are essentially 95% effective against fighting that virus. There's still a very small chance that you could transmit it. But to Dr. Arnold's point, those that have been vaccinated have a much more benign, softer course. So for example, if you were not vaccinated, maybe have a couple of more risk factors, you could potentially end up in the hospital or ICU. But say you did get vaccinated, say you were the unlucky 5% that got COVID. Instead of being admitted to the ICU and having a tube down your throat, you might just have some fevers and chills. So the benefits are multifactorial. And our ability to be able to achieve herd immunity requires getting as many people vaccinated and achieving that 80%, and using our total toolkit of physically distancing, washing hands, and wearing a mask to fight the virus. And one thing to keep in the back of your head too, as well, is that different communities have different positivity rates. We talk about the social determinants of health, the challenges of people, inability to physically distance among each other, and where environments where it becomes a lot more difficult to control a virus. We need to keep cognizant of that and think about what those tools really mean. So sometimes I hear people say, oh, I'm vaccinated, but I might take off my mask. We don't really have that benefit yet, given the fact that we haven't been able to control the virus. And if you are residing in a region where the positivity rate is pretty high, meaning the virus that is around the neighborhood, a couple of blocks, you need to be more conservative than what is necessarily out there. So herd immunity is essentially the goal, and we're chipping away at it greatly. And we're having increased supply from the federal government, and we're seeing increased supply throughout the state of Illinois, and it's something exciting to achieve. But I think being able to make sure that we pull our family members into this fight and making sure that they're vaccinated and thinking about the most marginalized and the most vulnerable within our families is a way that we fight this and stave off all the loss that we've experienced thus far. And thank you, Mark, for being vulnerable and sharing your story as well.
Thank you, sir. I imagine that Dr. Arnold had something to add on that, sir. You're mute. You're on mute, yep.
I think Dr. Walker did an excellent job, covering that topic. And, and it comes down to exactly what he was saying, continue to wear your mask, wash your hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, and physically distance. So physical distancing, I don't like the term social distancing, because that implies that you are social abandonment or isolation or disconnection. That's not part of the process. We are on a Zoom right now, so we are socializing. And so I think you still need to stay in contact with people because there are different mental health concerns and other things that are going on in families. I had lost my father-in-law. My wife lost about 12 of her classmates. It's like I have one cousin who passed away in Virginia, one in New York. So this is something that is affecting many, many families. And I just want to make one side note is with Pastor Moss. I just really respect you so much because during this outreach, you've been feeding people too. There are other needs that are out there, just as pressing as the getting the vaccination, for these families. So I just really applaud you for what you're doing out there. And the thing you want to avoid, as Dr. Walker said, is becoming isolated, just becoming admitted to a hospital and going to an intensive care unit where they have to put a tube down. And, quarantine, isolation, and contact tracing is no fun for anybody. And if you can avoid that by getting vaccinated, by all means do so. And they do have treatments like antivirals, monoclonal antibodies, and steroids and supportive care. The best thing to do is stay out the hospital. And I know Dr. Walker has many stories around that as we're going further. He'll probably share that with you.
Yeah, thank you again, sir. Thank you. Ms. Holloway, I'm not sure whether you have anything to add on that point.
No, I think the doctors have addressed it quite well.
Okay.
I just want to add that, especially for our communities of color, and given all the barriers and the social determinants that we face within these communities, that it is really important that we do achieve that herd immunity and that people are able to continue making their livelihoods for their families, continue to live in without fear of losing a family member because of their housing condition or their eating condition or their living condition. So really, really making sure that we can hone in on our communities of color and make sure that we are at the front of the lines getting those vaccinations so that we can achieve that herd immunity and make livelihood better for our families.
Very good, very good. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. Now, there is this issue, again, questions that are within the community going around. There's a concern. Some people believe that the RNA-based vaccine will get into them, get into their DNA, mess up their DNA. And there are individuals that believe that the vaccine is actually some chip that is being implanted in individuals so they can be tracked or monitored. I really would like for the panel to address this question from their vantage point to talk to the community. Again, two-part question. The very first part is the issue of the mRNA getting into our genome and messing up with our DNA. Please share with our audience if the practicality or the possibility of that happening. I probably want to start with Dr. Arnold on this.
I know Dr. Walker is an expert on this topic, so I'll make some brief comments and pass it off to him as well. But the mRNA is a very, very, it's actually a very, very small piece of the genetic material that's used to make protein. So everyone laughs at me because I have this model on my desk, but it's a tennis ball with a push pin in it. So if you could imagine this tennis ball being surrounded by push pins, and if I take one of these push pins out, that is the spike protein that we worry about that connects to our cells. So the only thing that that vaccine can actually make is this spike protein. It can't make the virus, so you cannot get the disease from the vaccine. There's no way you can do it. And it's a very small piece of mRNA that your cell incorporates and makes these proteins, mass produces these, so your body can mount a response to this spike protein. But the mRNA only lasts for 2 to 3 days in your intracellularly. It cannot enter the nucleus where the DNA is. So it cannot integrate itself into your own DNA. That's not the purpose of this. This is just a messenger to make this protein, and then it dissolves. It's out of your system. So your body actually responds to it in several ways, but it gives you some lasting immunity, and we can get into that, the time period of immunity and how it lasts. But again, this technology is based on something that's been practiced for at least 20 years and has been found to be safe and effective. And I'll pass it over to Dr. Walker for him to add to that.
Please.
You pretty much covered it, Dr. Arnold, but I would say if I was to pick an analogy, I usually typically like to use a boxer. So if you got into a ring with somebody that had a very unique form, you never were able to prepare for them, and you go into the ring, you're either going to get knocked out or you're not going to last very long. But if you go back to the lab, you train for 30 days, you see their technique, you prepare for them, you're either going to beat them or you're going to last longer. And that's essentially what your immune system does with this virus. It exposes either a weakened version or just a small portion of it to prepare your immune system to fight it in the future and fight the real deal. But focusing on the science is one thing. When we partner with different community organizations and we are out in the community talking frequently, it's one thing to focus on the science, but what people are truly listening for is who is advocating for them, who is checking for them. When we think about the distrust that our community has had with the healthcare system. And one of the things that we tend to mention a lot is, for example, the Black Physician Association, who independently evaluated the science and made recommendations that we need to make sure we take this vaccine. They checked that the research data was representative and that there was enough Black participants and that the vaccine did what it was supposed to. And then they see leaders such as Pastor Moss, Veronica, Dr. Arnold taking the vaccine online on social media. I don't think before I wasn't much of a social media person, but I definitely posted my picture of myself getting the vaccine. And I also shared that, my in-laws got vaccinated, my parents got vaccinated, and they were apprehensive just like anybody else. But if we're going to be able to get through this, we have to be able to make sure, as Pastor Moss mentioned earlier, that we are partnering with trusted organizations, people that have established a rapport, that know the community inside and out, and that they know have their best interests. Because at the end of the day, people have an association with what has been the history with healthcare system, and it's on us to be able to make sure that we're doing the hard work, the diligence, to make sure that it's safe for our communities.
Okay. Well,
if I might
Pastor
add,
Moss, you have something to add, sir, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to add just in reference to it, that just kind of a funny thing that happened. someone was making the claim, we don't know what's in the vaccine. We're concerned about what's in the vaccine, as they were eating a bag of Flaming Hots. And I made the statement, said, you don't know what's in the Flaming Hots. The Flaming Hots are probably more dangerous than anything else that you're going to receive at the hospital. So I think sometimes you have to communicate in reference to some of the things that are truly a danger. The Flaming Hots, what you're eating at that bucket of chicken that you have, what you're getting at the corner store, what we're putting in our bodies, this processed food. You can't pronounce what's on the back of the bag. And then you're going to make the complaint that you don't know what's in the vaccine, but you can't pronounce what's on the back of the bag of the Flaming Hots.
Very good point.
Pastor Moss, can I add an amen?
That's really a good point. So the next thing now is this. We have gotten the vaccines, and so for how long are we protected? How long do we expect this vaccine we've gotten to protect us for? Is it like going to be like the flu vaccine where we do it annually, or what is the situation? What's going on out there? I would start this off with Dr. Walker, sir.
The reality of the situation is that we don't necessarily know, but the good thing is that the research is still actively going on. So the titers, those antibodies that fight the virus, are being constantly measured throughout the year. And it could be that we have to get vaccinated every year, or it could be every 2 or 3 years. I work at the hospital, so some things we get vaccinated annually, some things we get vaccinated later. I think the positive thing to take away from that is that we already have a framework and infrastructure where we receive vaccines such as the flu vaccine every year. So it's more to be determined, but I think it's not necessarily a pressing issue when I think about all the other issues that are going on with the pandemic.
Right. In the line of those things that are to be determined, Dr. Walker, correct me if I'm wrong. I understand, at least for the case of pregnant women and young kids, the study is ongoing to validate what dose and what frequency they should be vaccinated for people that fall in that bracket. Please share your thoughts on what you know on this.
Agreed. Children, well, studies are actively going on in terms of quote unquote special populations. But ACOG, the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology, has recommended that the vaccine should not be withheld because of the risk benefit of actually getting COVID versus the risk of any type of adverse reaction related to the vaccine. My general recommendation is that if you have had any issues getting vaccines before in the past, meaning you may have had a very bad allergic reaction, or you just have multiple allergies, talk with your provider. It's likely that they'll tell you to still get the vaccine. When we look at the first 1.2 million doses, only 11 had anaphylaxis, which is just a very, very bad allergic reaction where you see people swell up, their lips swell up, but no deaths associated with it. And what we typically tell people is to make sure that they have their EpiPen present if they fall into that population.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, sir. And I believe that along the same line, we have things like individuals with, say, compromised immune system, or sort of individuals with immune diseases. This is one of those cases where you need to talk to your physician and get advice from them to decide on what course is best for you. Is that correct?
So people with comorbidities, compromised immune systems, I usually tell them to just go and get the vaccine. What we see is that, for example, people with end-stage renal disease, chronic kidney disease have a 15 times more likelihood of death compared to a healthy individual. And when you think about the framework and you think about all the implementation that's happened across the state and across the nation, the first thing we did was vaccinate our healthcare workers. We need people that can save lives and have the knowledge to do that. But after that, we went to the most vulnerable. We started with our elderly, who we know account for the majority of deaths. In Illinois, we took an equity approach by starting at 65, because we know that the life expectancy for Black and Brown communities is much lower compared to white populations. And then as you go through the phases, you'll see medical conditions, et cetera. So the only time that I truly recommend for them to get a second opinion is if they have a history of allergic reactions, or if they OBGYN, if they're pregnant. But otherwise, if they have multiple medical conditions, I definitely want them to get vaccinated. If they have any respiratory conditions, asthma or sarcoidosis, I definitely want them to get vaccinated, because if they have COVID, their likelihood of having a poor outcome is much more likely. And one of the hardest things to do is get somebody off of a ventilator once they've been intubated.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the insight. It's amazing how time flies. When we sit around having a chat of this nature, we can go all night. But at this point, I will want to check with Ms. Spearman to see what questions we have from the audience, so that our great panel can take a look at it before we formally get sign off. So Seville, please share with us whatever questions you have, ma'am.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been some great questions and some great dialogue being sent our way. So thank you to our attendees for sending in all this great information. A question that stood out was, how do we reach out to young people to get vaccinated? Many African-American people are skeptical about getting the COVID-19 vaccine, and what can we do to convince our people and our young people that it is safe? I know we touched on that a little bit, but I think especially as a university, our CSU demographic, reaching out to the young people, how do we encourage them?
Right. That's a very, very good question. And one of the very first steps is, I think, is for us to be able to encourage individuals to come and flood forums or webinars of this nature. I would think that we could be having 500 people plus in a gathering of this sort to get the very basic information, because again, the whole idea is to be able to dispel the myths and the facts. So people should end up making decisions to themselves but we want them to make those decisions from an informed position. Personally, I would think getting into educational forum of this type, but again, we have a wide breadth of panelists here that with a breadth of experience, that I think they may have varied opinions on this issue, which I think is really, really, really important, something that we need to pay particular attention to. So I would want to start with Mr. Hunter, and then right next to him, I'll call on Pastor Moss and Ms. Galloway to share their thoughts on this. Mr. Hunter, sir, can you share any thoughts on how we can reach the younger folks?
I'd just like to say very briefly that I like to I would like to very much echo what you just said, sir. It has been so refreshing and so powerful to have these discussions of truth, facts, and information. We are, I think, in my personal opinion, we are definitely climbing uphill in getting this information out, because social media is way ahead of us as far as getting out this information. So information, and getting to the youth and youth leaders who have respect, who have the respect and influence of the youth. They may not want to listen to an old guy like me, but they may certainly want to listen to their peers. So I'll turn it over from there.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Galloway, please, Ms. Galloway, please, can you share your thoughts on this?
Yes, certainly. So definitely engaging the youth, and they want to be engaged in the discussion, I think is a way for them to feel ownership and feel like they are part of the solution and not part of the problem. So ever since the pandemic hit, we have been engaging youth in the discussion. We've had a forum that they had with our director where it was led by youth and for youth, and they were discussing with the director questions and concerns that they had about the COVID and how it's restricting their livelihood. We also had a kind of like a challenge, a competition where we engaged them in designing masks and talking about, why this is important and submitting that as an essay competition. And as a matter of fact, we're about to announce the winner and make awards in the coming week. And the director, again, will be directly engaged with the youth. And then we also have the ambassador program that's reaching all age, all walks of life, and all age groups. And we certainly have youth that are promoting the vaccination information and promoting, the social distancing and everything COVID related to their peers and to their community members, because we know just from statistics that they would listen to their peers more than they would listen to their parents. So just keeping those lines of communications open. As Dr. Arnold and I started, hitting right around November, we realized we need to really start getting ahead of these vaccination conversations. And so we were not necessarily just looking at Black and Brown communities, but we were really drilling into the subgroups, those that we know have the biggest hesitancy or the biggest distrust for public health or for providers, and having those what we call listening conversations and just listening and understanding what their concerns were. And then we would compile those and provide that to our communications group so that they can tailor and design appropriate messaging targeting that specific group. So those are the ways that we've found to kind of listen to what concerns them and make sure that we are directing conversations to kind of address their concerns without being judgmental and without being opinionated about what their thoughts are.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, ma'am. And I'm sure Pastor Moss has a vantage point within the uniqueness of the community that he serves. But Pastor, we didn't look at this from the context of your own community, that is a faith-based community, and extend that out, dovetail that out to the general community as a whole. How do we really get our arms around the younger folks about the reality of what we are facing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we approach this with, just like with anything, as a campaign. So this is something that I think Chicago State could be extremely powerful in doing. What Holloway already mentioned, let's take our social media influencers just in Chicago. Those who are social media influencers from fashion to music to art to food, and you bring them together in terms of communicating about the vaccine. Look at your top Instagram influencers and have them communicate about the vaccine. Take some of your local artists to say, hey, we've got some funding here. Will you offer a free digital concert for people who go to X medical clinic to get the vaccine, that they can watch it, you exclusively, and have a conversation with them? Oh, there'll be a whole lot of people getting in line for the vaccine and after that. But we have to think creatively and not just the simple, please get the vaccine. Go to where people are and find those who are influential in that particular community. And we've used this strategy medically over and over again for different ailments in our community to be able to educate. We can do the same thing with COVID-19.
Thank you, Pastor. That's brilliant. Thank you. Seville, we have time for one more question, I think. Let's squeeze one more in.
Yes. Where can people go to learn more about the vaccine and to compare and contrast the different vaccines?
I would It will depend. Personally, I'm subscribed to the New England Journal of Medicine. They send alerts on areas of interest, be it vaccine or whatever thing that it is that is of interest to you. And then there's, of course, the CDC. The CDC is really a remarkable resource. And this brings up, just before I get to the panel quickly on this question, I want to point out in terms of the duration or the speed with which the vaccine was developed. So over the years, most vaccines, people have side effects. They show side effects within 35 days of getting that vaccine. We're talking about so many years back. It's not new. However, please keep in mind that the vaccines we are using today, before they were approved, after you've ended your trial, you wait for 60 days before you even bring it up for this emergency approval. So they almost double what has been recorded historically, being 35 days, where they see any sign of any problem. So, but yeah, Dr. Arnold, please, if you could take that question.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, I have my particular source. I go to the Illinois Department of Public Health website. They have incredible information in there. The Office of Minority Health Affairs, you need to be getting involved with their website. The Office of Men's Health, you need to get involved with their website. You need to be educating yourself about chronic diseases in general. And this also is a reflection back on the questions you asked prior to this one about young people. In Minnesota, just about 2 years ago, what they've been seeing is a wild mutation of this thing, this variant that's actually spreading through children, unlike it had spread through children previously. And many of the young people feel, well, I'm not going to be affected by this because, you know, 98% of the deaths have happened in people 50 years old or older. But we do not know yet how this is going to affect your chronic disease states. If you have asthma, if you have diabetes, if you have, you know, heart conditions, and back to what Reverend, Pastor Dr. Moss was saying, is that you know, the underlying mechanisms for chronic disease like heart attacks, strokes, they are based on our diet, what we're putting in our bodies. And this virus attacks the same pathways that are being attacked by these things that we put into our bodies. You know, the flaming hots. I was using Cheetos in my example before, but these chemicals we're putting in our body, and this virus attacks the brain, it attacks the heart, the blood vessels, the kidneys, the liver, the lungs. We haven't seen a virus that is this diabolical in what it does, getting back to why everyone should get vaccinated. And as Dr. Walker was mentioning, getting to herd immunity so we can stop these variants from occurring is critical. We have got to put this fire out, and that the one way to get there is by being vaccinated.
I just wanted to add a quick point really quickly. So there's 3 available vaccines, and I just want to make sure that people understand that all of them are effective. So although the efficacies are different, if you get offered the vaccine, take it. The best thing that you can do is take the vaccine, whichever one that is available to you during this time. We can go through kind of the differences of all 3 of them. One is mRNA and one is not. But at the end of the day, the science is true, and they have shown to, when given out to large populations, save lives.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Walker. Thank you. Now, the one thing before we actually wrap up, I see Seville is looking as if she wants to squeeze in something. Is there one really pressing thing? No? Okay, good. So one thing I want to add is that, please, I said earlier that Ms. Spearman should share her contacts, all of us on this panel, with the audience. I am not claiming that this panel know everything. We don't know everything. But one thing I can guarantee you is that we would know someone that could answer whatever question you bring regarding these vaccines and COVID. I would, again, I don't have answers to everything, but I can guarantee you, I would know someone I can reach. Already, I have these very good friends I have in this panel. I can knock on their door anytime and say, hey, there's this burning question here. Please, what do you think about it? So please, by all means, let us take responsibility about our health and by extension, our community. What we had hoped to accomplish or portray, convey to you this evening was simply share what we know as a facts, so that whatever decision you make at the end of the day, we understand some of those decisions. We know of the abuse that minority communities have faced in the health system in this country. So arguably, we can have so many reasons why not to take the vaccine, for instance. But what we are hoping to accomplish is that we want you to be able to make those decisions from an informed position. Get what the facts are. Share those facts with your auntie, with your grandma, share it with people around you, and whatever decision they make at the end of the day should be what they are making, not from say, well, I read this from this website or from this social media and so on, because there's a gazillion amount of information out there, so much so that it's often difficult to separate the facts from the stories. So I really would want to take this moment to say, before I do that, let us squeeze it in, give the panelists a chance to give a last word. Give a last word to the community. What do you really want them to take home? For that purpose, let's use 45 seconds to 1 minute to share your last words and thoughts on this subject. And please rest assured, I may come knocking at your door again, not too far in the future, that we should reconvene and continue this sort of conversation. So I would start with Dr. Arnold, please. 30 seconds, 45 seconds, okay. Last word, sir.
Okay, yes, sir. One of the things I wanted to touch on was the historical note you just hit. The Tuskegee study was done from 1932 to 1972. In 1964, penicillin became available, and those men were not allowed to be treated with a cure. This vaccine actually prevents us from following that same pathway where we watch the unnatural folding of syphilis, right? In people, this vaccine stops us from having the unnatural folding of COVID-19. If we don't participate in the safe and effective treatment, we're putting ourselves in the same position that the men in the Tuskegee experiment were in, not being able to get a treatment that could stop them from dying and having the consequences of a disease like syphilis. So we have got to re-engineer our thinking, and made me think about, Africa was the first place we had variolation with inoculations. We actually did it for smallpox, for snake bite, venom. We did it before Jenner did it in 1764, who was considered to be the father of vaccinations. And that's one thing, is this theme: science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. As a people, we have been a part of that from the beginning, from the inception of science. So people need to sign up for CSU and go to Dr. Batanga and make sure that they sign up for his STEM, things. We need to get more people of color into this industry. It's time for us to come back and take our rightful place as the originators of much of the science that we benefit from today.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. Dr. Walker, last word, sir.
Dr. Arnold did a great job summarizing the current state and demand that we need to make sure people of color are pursuing STEAM. The one thing that I just want to make sure that people can get from this is that their actions matter. When you go out tomorrow, or when you're talking to, if you're a 16-year-old or 15-year-old or young person, you can definitely be part of this fight. And getting vaccinated is the first step that we can get to stopping from having those very difficult discussions at the bedside that you can't see your family member during their last couple of days of death, or reopen, or our next steps towards reopening the businesses within our communities that were lost from the COVID-19 pandemic. A closer step to being able to fill our churches and hug our loved ones and do some of the very actions that make us feel alive. Just know that what you do and what you do from your day to day matters. And if we're going to be able to hold each other accountable for some of the structural and systemic racism that put our community in this place prior to the pandemic, we need as many people together to be able to hold people such as ourselves, IDPH, state governments, policy, city businesses accountable for equity. So I'll stop there, and I hope that everybody's able to do those steps that we discussed throughout the day.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you. We really appreciate you. Mr. Hunter, sir, you want to share your last thoughts?
I'd like to end as I started. It is personal. It is about our families. It is about our community. And so please, encourage you to please share this information. As has been said, this is being made available to all of us so that we can make an informed decision. And so just please share and to do it for us. It's real.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Holloway, please, ma'am, share your thoughts, your final words to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you. So for me, I think it's an opportunity for us in the public health field and for us talking about health disparities to restart and start all over and look at how we operate internally, and time for us to change our internal structure, time to address racism as a public health crisis, and so just really time to really elevate health disparities and the relevance of health equity in everything that we do. So I take this opportunity and this challenge to make sure that we can learn and build from this mistake. Well, not a mistake, learn and build from this virus, this unfortunate occurrence. And so that we are not talking about the same, disparities 20 years down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. In other situations, I would ask Pastor Moss to close us out in prayer, but I would like to hear his last thoughts in this case. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. I would just simply say this: one, get vaccinated, get vaccinated, get vaccinated. Number two, do not use Pookie and Ray Ray as your medical advice. Do not allow them to usurp the work and witness of Dr. Walker or Dr. Arnold. They're good for a bootleg CD, but they're not good for getting a vaccine. The other piece, do not allow Facebook in any way, shape, or form to replace good medical advice. Facebook or Instagram or Twitter is not the place for good medical advice. And so we have to do a disinformation campaign against the disinformation campaign that's going on in our community around the vaccine. And finally, we can deal with COVID-19 if we effectively deal with COVID-16-19. COVID-16-19 is the one that is truly worsening the issues in and around COVID-19. So while we're attacking COVID-19, we've got to deal with systemic racism and white supremacy, which structurally is affecting and destroying our community. So we've got a vaccination for one, we've got to create an immunity for the other.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you could not say, no one could say any better than what you did. Greatly appreciate you. If Miss Karen Freeman Wilson is still with us, I was actually meant to give, oh, she's in the car driving. Are you driving, ma'am?
No, I'm a passenger.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask you out to give the closing words. I was scheduled to give the closing words, but either you,
Absolutely.
President
I
Scott,
that.
either you, President Scott, I have the honor to passing that baton to you to close us out.
Yes, well, I just want to thank everyone for joining. I want to thank all of these knowledgeable panelists. I've learned new information tonight myself. Want to thank Chicago State and the team there, as well as the Illinois Department of Health. And I want to especially thank my Urban League, Chicago Urban League team, and all of the colleagues throughout the state. God bless you all. We can fight this, both of the pandemics together.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much. President Scott, ma'am.
Just to echo Karen's words, I want to thank each of you all for taking the time to address this issue. I know many of you are beating this drum every time that you get an audience or an opportunity to do so. I especially appreciate Dr. Batanga, who is involved in mountains of research every day and moving our students through the world of science, for bringing his expertise to this discussion. I just want our community to know that this is real. This is taking us out, many of us out, and it doesn't have to be that way. So I want us to take the time to encourage others to get the vaccination, put the fear aside, move forward, and do what's right for our people. And again, thank you for being with us this evening, panelists. I know again that many of you are out here every day in these conversations, and we appreciate you having that conversation with us tonight and with our community. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you. And thank you. God bless. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.